Welcome to Newshour. Tonight we're turning our attention to Baku, a city at the forefront of global climate reform. Well, following its high-profile presidency of COP29, Azerbaijan is preparing to host the second Baku Climate Action Week this autumn. The event, scheduled for late September, aims to deepen momentum around climate finance, energy transition and international cooperation. But signs are that that transition is already taking shape. Azerbaijan's economy, long fueled by hydrocarbons, is undergoing a quite yet significant shift, from launching its first green bonds to attracting attention from global investors. The country is now exploring how sustainable finance can power its next chapter. In just a moment, we'll bring you a special report from the ground examining how Baku is balancing legacy and leadership as it pivots towards a greener future. But first, a closer look at how the past and future of energy are colliding in the heart of the Caspian.
Once the world's first oil town, Baku is now navigating a delicate transition, from fossil fuels to future finance. In 2025, Azerbaijan's economy finds itself at a crossroads. Forecasts put GDP growth at 3.5%, a slowdown driven by easing investment and stabilizing hydrocarbon production. But behind the numbers lies a broader shift in direction. The financial center of the capital is undergoing a quiet revolution. In March, SOCAR launched its first ever green bonds on the Baku Stock Exchange, a milestone that positions Azerbaijan within the global movement towards environmentally sustainable investing. Green bonds are part of a growing category of ESG finance, environmental, social, and governance, which is reshaping how capital flows across borders. These aren't just symbolic gestures. Green bonds fund real-world projects, from wind farms to solar panels, from clean water to sustainable transport. And crucially, they're seen by many investors as safer, more thoroughly vetted assets. Hosting COP29 last year has given Baku added momentum. The government has set a clear target: 30% of the nation's electricity from renewables by 2030. Projects are already underway, including an interconnector with 4 nations to deliver Caspian wind energy to Europe. But all of this is unfolding against a volatile global backdrop. US Treasury yields are rising once again, currently hovering above 5% for short-term notes. Tariff policies introduced by the Trump administration have triggered price increases at home, driving inflation, and with it, demand for higher returns. For Azerbaijan, that volatility hits closer to home. The manat is pegged to the US dollar, ensuring exchange rate stability for trade. But it also means that global financial shocks echo loudly within the domestic economy. Still, inflation here remains well managed, forecast at 5.3%, comfortably within the central bank's target band. That relative stability is giving officials space to pursue deeper reforms. International partners are taking notice. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the European Investment Bank are both exploring opportunities to issue green bonds locally, signaling confidence in Azerbaijan's green finance potential. Meanwhile, demand is rising, especially from a new generation of investors. For them, ESG is not a buzzword, it's a benchmark. They want portfolios that balance profit with principle, returns with responsibility. Each green bond tells 2 stories, one of capital growth and one of climate stewardship. Whether it's a turbine on the Absheron coast or solar panels on a school roof, these projects show what sustainable finance can deliver. Azerbaijan isn't walking away from its past, but it is preparing for a different kind of future. One measured not just in barrels and balance sheets, but in cleaner air, greater resilience, and deeper investor trust.
Well, earlier I spoke to 2 guests helping to shape that transition. Nigar Arpadarai, Azerbaijan's UN climate change high-level champion for COP29, and Professor Dr. Ismail Serageldin, co-chair of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center and former vice president of the World Bank. Together, they offered insights on how Baku is balancing legacy and leadership as it pivots towards a greener future. Well, thank you very much both for joining us here at this prestigious location. Nigar, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay. We saw the great success of COP29 here in Azerbaijan, headlines all over the world. We're now on the horizon of Baku Climate Action Week. That's coming up soon. Tell us about the thinking behind how we keep that momentum going.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here in this NGIC. And yes, there are a couple of parts to your question, actually. If we speak about COP29, I'm really proud to speak about the successes and the historic outcomes that we have achieved all together as the global climate community. So basically, just to remind, it was the Baku Climate Finance goal that was achieved, 300 billion, which will be redirected to the developing world. It was the Article 6 of Paris Agreement, which was, overdue for 10 years. And finally, in Baku, the world came together and there was the success. And it was Loss and Damage Fund, and it was many important decisions that was made in Baku. So our COP was really historic COP, I must say. And all those decisions will impact the world and the global climate movement in the world, actually, all the countries. And yes, if we speak about the big picture now, and what is happening at this moment, we see certain uncertainties. There are some political changes that are happening, and we must openly speak about them. And they create some uncertainty in the global climate movement. But I think that what we need to do, we need to learn our lessons from the past, what was achieved, what we have done over these years, so from Paris Agreement to now, and what was successful, what needs to be done in a better place. And we need have a new vision and act based on that vision. So that's what we need to do. And as COP29 presidency, we've always been very open about bringing the parties together, about the vision to the global climate action movement. And before COP29, if we speak about the Baku Climate Action Week, actually before COP29, there were a number of events that were organized in Baku and outside of our city. So one of the missions that we had was to engage with non-state actors, and we always, as a presidency, was trying to widen the circle, to bring parties to consensus, and also to widen the circle to engage with as many non-state actors as possible. So private sector, civil society, academia, young people, subnational cities, all these groups need to be involved. And Baku Climate Action Week that took place in Baku last year before COP was a great platform for that. It was extremely successful. Over a week we had a number of panel discussions and events happening. We had different sectors of private sector people coming together and committing to invest into the green transition. We had government officials speaking to all the different sectors. So basically it was a great success, and what we do now this year, what we keep this momentum. We speak to global climate action movement and to the climate community, and we will also be organizing Baku Climate Action Week for the second time in Baku this year, 29th of September. So, but before that, we obviously will have a number of milestones. We are going to Bonn, we are going to London Climate Week, we will be participating in Rio Climate Week, and we will come to pre-COP, COP, but we will also have Baku Climate Action Week. For us, it's a great momentum to engage with non-state actors, to bring private sector, to talk to government officials, to have international organizations, to have young people. Because COP29 not only brought success, to the global community, but also it was a chance for our region to plug in our private sector and our non-state actors to the overall climate agenda. So that's the plan now.
So the work didn't end after the COP29 event. If anything, actually, that work intensified.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very interesting indeed. Dr. Serageldin, can I bring you in now? I mean, you're someone who has helped shape big ideas on a global stage, really more than many in the world. Many achievements when it comes to integrating culture in change, not least as founder of this prestigious organisation. Can I ask you about the role that you believe culture should play in climate action, and perhaps also how the NGIC might be playing a role too?
Well, culture basically involves a series of views and values and norms that are societally accepted, more or less, in particular communities and societies. And everything we are talking about, whether it is about justice and equity, in fact, we were talking about that, Nigar and I, just before this meeting, about some of the incredible poverty that leaves people in places like sub-Saharan Africa who don't even have access to clean water and so on, who barely depend on rain. And with the changes in climate, the impact on their lives can go from famine to flood and so on. So there's a concern with our common humanity that I think cultural values develop and make you engaged to deal with this. There's also culture has brought a very different perspective, which many people from the richest countries to the poorest have acquired, which is really the relationship that you have with nature and the environment. And that is a cultural dimension of the first order. And therefore, yes, there is much to be said for the role of decision makers, politicians, private sector CEOs and others, but also for the NGOs that act on this, that society can be affected by the messages that are delivered on the basis of an impact on the prevalent cultural norms. To use the words of one of my great heroes, Abraham Lincoln, we need to appeal to the better angels of their nature.
Wow. Very, very good indeed. And can I just move to you, Nigar, and just ask a bit about something you touched on earlier, which is the connection, relationship, synergies between the work that you're leading and also London Climate Action Week in particular. Can you tell us a bit about that connection, your involvement with that?
Yes, well, we are organizing Baku Climate Action Week in partnership with London Climate Action Week, and last year also this London Climate Action Week was our main partner, and this year we continue to work with them, and it's actually important to unite our efforts, you know, because we have our different regions, and each region comes with its own aspirations, its own challenges, its own issues related to the climate agenda. But at the end of the day, we are all very united and interconnected, basically. That's what I understood being in the climate community, that whatever happens in one part of the world, it impacts the other part of the world. And from that sense, like we are now trying to work closely with London Climate Action Week, because it is one of the oldest and the biggest climate weeks in the world, and it brings together, you know, all the people from different parts of the world, from private sector, different industries, civil society people, government officials, and we will be participating at their events also as the presidency. We will also be organizing our separate events there, and also they will be kind of bringing stakeholders to Baku Climate Action Week. So, and there are a couple of subjects that are similar, like green skills, for example, green transition to green economy, like urban development, smart cities. So there are a number of subjects that will be discussed there and here, and we will be trying to kind of to coordinate our efforts. But altogether, yes, I think that our main goal is to make sure that Baku Climate Action Week is bringing together people from the region, again taking this momentum to look at the results of COP29, to have the vision for future, and to discuss what can be done better to bring, you know, everyone who needs to be there.
It's very interesting. Diplomacy, partnership, working together, a sense of community. Education too, a critical point. And Dr. Serageldin, we were talking just before we went on air about this. You are author of over 100 books. Your list of honorary degrees goes far beyond the cut-off point on our website. Last time I met you, I was asking your advice about how to get my daughter to read C.S. Lewis and stop reading TikTok. What's your sense of how education can increasingly play a role in helping us all as a planet to really tackle climate change?
I'm glad you raised that topic because I think it's very, 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 very important. First of all, education is not just about the impartation of skills. It is also about socialization. That's why it's very important that children are with other children in the same age group and they learn to interact with each other. And basically through the education system, specifically, most importantly in high school and college, you basically transform from a dependent child to an independent citizen. And that requires an approach to education which is much broader than simply the skills that you are acquiring, whether it be engineering skills or literary skills and so on, but you become a citizen. And that requires awareness of your responsibilities to others, working together. And that's the age group in which people experiment and they join NGOs and they join political parties, and there's a lot of give and take during that time. And that's why, contrary to what some people imagine, the free flow of information, debate, and free expression in that particular period of life is particularly important in developing responsible citizens who also acquire the skills, not just of the right to speak, but also the obligation to listen to others.
Does that mean that banning TikTok is not a good strategy?
I think you just have to mobilize the new realities. TikTok is associated with another phenomenon, which is a very big challenge for educators, and this is the general reduction in attention span. Younger people get bored more quickly and they need shorter spans. All right, then it's up to our responsibility, I think, those of us who believe in the importance of education, to use these tools. The same thing with chatbots and other type of AI. These are here to stay. I mean, simply wishing them away is not going to work. Wishing to stay with the 20th century techniques of education is not valid. We live in the 21st century and we must recognize that as a reality. But all you have to do is to learn how to work with these techniques, and all of these new technologies can assist in the fundamental process of developing an enlightened citizen who has a sense of responsibility, who, as I was mentioning before, has also an understanding that he not only has the right to speak, but that he has an obligation to listen to others as they speak. And we need to teach our young people both civility in discourse and rationality in argument, so that it's not driven by demonizing certain people and so on, but in fact giving and taking in ideas to bring in the kind of sensible skepticism and critical thinking that will make effective citizens. Now, I happen to think that young people generally have a very strong sense of moral obligation. And you see that in the demonstrations that they do about when they see things happening in Gaza, for example, that they consider outrageous and so on. When they see what's happening in Ukraine, they consider outrageous. Or they see hunger in places in the Sahel or elsewhere. I mean, they sense that they don't say, well, this is far away, I don't care. They sense that they are engaged. And that's kind of the part of education that we should also be valuing. So let's make use of the new technologies. Let's not try to avoid them, but let us also remember that yes, we need to do proper skill impartation so that the new jobs in the green economy or the circular economy will be there, but also to make sure that the values that we are advancing, the humane values that we are advancing, and for which I believe the vast majority of young people are very already naturally engaged, need to be nurtured, because we are suffering globally. Of course, some people suffer more than others, but I think that we are suffering globally, and it is our collective responsibility. And I think what Nigar was saying about how people working in climate change sense of themselves as a community, I think that is equally true. And here in NGIC, I'm happy to point out that despite very broad and highly distinguished membership, people feel like a sense of family, that when we come to NGIC events, they recognize each other and they share ideas, even when they disagree with each other. But as I said, again, civility in discourse, rationality in argument.
Yeah, it's very, very important. I mean, we see all around us, there are world leaders who've written lovely handwritten notes, and the word family comes up time and time again. Quite an unusual thing for a world leader to write, but it's very, very clearly a very important part of what happens here and the bond that people have. Just on that point that you made about the sense of being a global citizen, a responsible global citizen. Nigar, I know that's something that came through very strongly at COP29. You obviously had this all-encompassing role as high-level champion. Just give us your reflections. Now many months have gone by since the event. What do you look back on with the most pride? What do you think were really the biggest achievements?
Well, first of all, our role as the presidency continues. So we are still working, and we are now working closely with COP30 to make COP30 success. But I think that Baku will always stay as the successful COP with historic decisions. This climate finance, Article 6, I already pointed out. But the way how our country and our presidency brought together and build a bridge between global north and global south. There was a new dynamic with global south having a voice in this conversation. So it was extremely important for us to have this balance, to be transparent and open, to bring parties together. And we've always been open about our mission, and we've always also been open about our rhetoric, because one of the lessons learned for me personally is that in the global climate action and global climate movement, let's say, the rhetoric is sometimes moralizing. It's sometimes about ideologies. But the global climate action is not about ideologies. It's about empathy, and it's about solidarity and consensus. It's about collaboration. So that's what we always called for, that we were saying that you cannot alienate certain sectors or certain countries. Like you remember, we've been criticized for being the oil and gas country, producing country hosting COP29. But we were always open about our background and about our vision for future. We were leading by example. Our president was very clear from day one about why Azerbaijan is hosting that, about vision for future. So, and we were always following that rule, saying that you need everyone on board. You need all sectors on board. You cannot alienate oil and gas producing companies, for example, saying that we don't need them in the global climate action. No, you need everyone. So that was something that we always called for. And I'm very proud of the work that Azerbaijan has done, not only because of the outcomes. Outcomes will always stay as the historic outcomes of COP29. About the way we built our work with non-state actors also, about engaging private sector, about engaging civil society, engaging small and medium enterprises, and giving the voice to all the vulnerable, let's say, groups. So that's something that I think is important, and we've launched our initiatives as the presidency, 14 initiatives. We have declarations, we have pledges that address all the different sectors: energy, urban development, digitalization, tourism. We have peace. We have all the important subjects that we brought up and gathered support from everyone. We had small and medium enterprises on board, and I'm really proud to say that what we did, we said that okay, if we discuss and we speak about the private sector, which for me is something that is completely different story. We need private sector on board. And private sector comes with when it's incentivized. So we need incentives for private sector. But incentives are not always there, and we need policies, and we also need technologies so that private sector comes. But what we did, we not only brought large companies to Baku, we also brought small and medium enterprises. For the first time, we have organized business investment and philanthropy forum in the blue zone, in the middle of a blue zone, bringing more than 1,000 companies together. So my point is that we not only brought large companies, but also small and medium enterprises, because this is the backbone of economy. So basically, I think that we have done a good job, and we continue to work with COP30 now to support COP30 and to make sure that all the promises are being implemented and the actions are being taken place.
Yeah, it's very interesting. As a journalist, spending a lot of time there with other journalists, one of the things that was very noticeable to us was that diplomatic dexterity and how hard and attritional that work it necessarily is. And also there's something very powerful about bringing people together who passionately disagree with each other, perhaps have long-standing grievances with one another, but can still maintain that civility that you spoke so much about. Now, finally, I'd just like to turn to you, Dr. Serageldin. I just want to talk about this institution here.
Yes.
I have to say, being here, and this is the second time I've been lucky enough to be in this building, it has a very different feel about it to the normal sort of place I imagine world leaders and great statesmen might meet. It's a very relaxed place, a place I think conducive to dialogue, to informality.
And to a sense of family.
A sense of family, as you say. Tell us a little bit about, though, the future of the NGIC and what you see coming up on the horizon over the next 12, 24 months, or perhaps further into the future.
Well, I see very much, this is an appropriate moment. Of course, we are talking very much of the transition from COP29 to COP30, and Nigar has addressed that very well. But I would like to say also, it's an important anniversary. This is the 80th birthday of the United Nations. And we are at a moment when pluralism and multilateralism is being challenged with increasingly senior powers, whether it be Russia or the United States, using their veto, ignoring massive votes in the General Assembly, etc., etc. And the ability of the international system to reinvent itself in terms of how to maintain a rules-based order for international relations, for development assistance, is going to be a big challenge in the year or two ahead. Now, NGIC is particularly well suited as a platform, as an organizer, as a colleague, as a partner with many other organizations, institutions, in addressing these kinds of issues. Many of our members are current, but also many are former heads of state and government, and as such have still the level of experience and wisdom that they have acquired, but also a greater degree of freedom of speech, where not every word is being weighed against the political impact of the particular actions in particular parliaments at the time, and to bring to bear their collective wisdom on how to help bridge the gaps, how to help build a stronger knitted community for those who are still believers in the idea that as a humanity we have a better way of dealing with issues. Let's not forget that the UN achieved through the series of summits it did in the 90s, the miracle of the millennium. 200 countries agreed on the Millennium Development Goals and said, this is what we want to do for the next 15 years. And then they agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals. And they agreed on the Paris Accord. And they agreed on the Sendai framework for disaster reduction. So there are possibilities out there that can help us, because the tasks that Nigar and their colleagues in the community are dealing with are not going to be done by one meeting or two meetings or three meetings. It's over a long haul. We are talking about how to challenge our relationship with the economy, with the environment, with production, with equity, inequalities, all sorts of things that are there built into that same cake, so to speak. They're baked in already as a set of issues that we have to address. And she and I were just talking earlier on, and I was giving her first-hand experience about how when we talk about issues like gender and climate or gender and other issues, that this is not some fashionable issue. It's a very real issue on the ground. I've seen it with my eyes. I've worked with very poor women in urban cities in India, in the rural areas of Bangladesh, in Africa, in Action, Latin America, and I see how women, in fact, do knit together the social capital that holds communities together, and how they're central to the task that we have to deal with.
Amazing. It's been amazing to speak to you both today. I wish we could have spoken for much longer, but I thank you both very sincerely for taking the time to speak to us here on AnewZ.
Welcome.
Thank you.
As Azerbaijan transitions from COP29 host to regional climate leader, events like Climate Action Week are helping shape the future of global cooperation. From institutional legacy to youth engagement, the road to COP30 is already being paved, with voices from Baku playing a central role. Well, that is all for this edition of NewsHour from all of us here at AnewZ. Thanks for being with us.